All right, guys, you know what I do for a living. My job is to make sense of the world for you. And I'm about to do that right now. I'm going to do it by putting together two disparate news items and showing that they're really closely related. The first is this item from usnews.com, U.S. News and World Report magazine. I quote, math and reading scores for 4th and 8th graders in the United States dropped since 2017, and the decrease in reading achievement has government researchers particularly concerned. Quote, over the past decade, there has been no progress in either mathematics or reading performance, and the lowest performing students are doing the worst, unquote, said Peggy Carr, Associate Commissioner of the National Center for Education Statistics, during a press call on Tuesday. Related item, now stick with me because this may get a little bumpy, from Breitbart. Senator Bernie Sanders, November 3rd Minneapolis rally scheduled with an appearance from Representative Ilhan Omar, Democrat, Minnesota, is moving to a different venue due to high demand, local media outlets reported. Sanders is slated to hold a rally alongside the far-left Minnesota lawmaker on Sunday. It was originally taking place at the Northrop Auditorium, but organizers opted to move the venue due to high ticket demand. It has now been moved to the Williams Arena, which can hold a crowd of over 14,000. The Northrop Auditorium maxes out at 2,700. The increased enthusiasm for Sanders has been reflected in recent polls. A Morning Consult poll released this week showed Sanders tying Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat, Massachusetts, for second place nationally, with a 20% support each, while the UNH Survey Center / CNN poll showed the socialist senator regaining his front-runner status in New Hampshire, unquote. So, what does a news item about the pathetic results of our education system have to do with the fact that a rally being held by Bernie Sanders and Ilhan Omar is going to be packed to the rafters? Well, that's a good question. That's why I asked it. The connection is a lack of good thinking. Kids today are not being taught to think well. They're busy with garbage like women's studies, African studies, transgender studies, social consciousness, green studies, etc., 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 all of which is, well, basically crap when it comes to functioning effectively in the world. Certainly they're not being taught logical, rational thought processes. They're not being taught math and science and history and English and political science and economics. Who cares about that stuff? They're being taught garbage, which is giving them heads filled with mush, which we see at the end of the conveyor belt in colleges and universities, where kids know basically nothing except that you better not wear the wrong Halloween costume. That much they know. Bernie Sanders is a wingnut. Ilhan Omar is a racist anti-Semite. Put them together and they're bad news. And yet, the people, young people usually, who are the products of our crap educational systems, love them. Can't get enough of them. They had to ratchet up the venue in order to support all the empty-headed yutzes who want to go hear Bernie Sanders extol the virtues of socialism. One little wrinkle in that is that there are no virtues in socialism. Socialism is a mean-spirited grab and go kind of philosophy that always results in poverty and disaster. Take a look at the socialist countries around the world. Take a look at Venezuela. Take a look at Cuba. There are many examples. They all suck. You wouldn't want to live there. Neither would I. And yet here's this guy who's about 140 years old, ranting and raving and carrying on like a fool about an economic system that will only wreak disaster on this country. And he's supported by Ilhan Omar, who never met a terrorist she didn't like, who married a couple of people at the same time, married her brother, has been fooling around on both her husbands with some guy she works with, wants to destroy Israel and hates Jews. These are the two star attractions that people in Minneapolis cannot get enough of. It ties back to education. That much is obvious. Here's what may be less obvious. If Americans are depending on schools, public schools, to educate their kids, then they themselves are being stupid. Primary education should come from parents. I don't mean sitting down with your kids with a textbook. I mean inculcating in them common sense, the ability to think, to reach rational decisions, to weigh possibilities, to look far in the future to see what wrinkles there will be as a result of what they're choosing today. And parents are woefully failing in this regard. Nothing that crazy Uncle Bernie is putting out passes the common sense smell test. And for all the PC that we're hearing about in this country, it turns out that when a Rashida Tlaib or a Ilhan Omar says blatantly anti-Semitic things, well, that's okay. That's all right. As long as you didn't call a him or her by mistake, or a her a him, because that's unforgivable. But anti-Semitism on the left, yeah, no big deal. No problem. It's fine. We're not teaching our kids to think critically. We're not giving them the basics, the rudiments that they need. Instead, we're filling their heads with mush. And by the way, that's when they're focusing on school. Most of the time, they're on TV or they're on their cell phones. And so who cares about school, even if they're getting crap at school? Folks, this is a concatenation, one of my favorite words. Like dominoes falling. One leads to the other, to the other, to the other. And it starts with parenting and extends all the way up to haters and ignoramuses vying for the highest offices in the land. We've got to start at the baseline, at ground zero. That's with raising kids to think critically, to think, to read, to want to learn when they get to school. It's a chain of events. And thus far in America in the last 20, 25 years, it's been a chain of disasters. And I shudder to think where it's leading. When people cannot get enough of crazy Bernie Sanders and Ilhan Omar. It's Wednesday. It's Real Truth. And we'll be right back. Go nowhere.